We're back, Alphas.
We're coming in hot with inspiring guests, witty banter, and colorful commentary for today's veterans and military community. This is the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
All right, welcome, Alphas. Thanks for joining us. We have a great show for you today. Great to have you with us. Tony Crescenzo is a U.S. Marine Corps veteran whose decades of executive leadership in defense tech have been shaped by uncompromising values of trust, accountability, and team empowerment. Those are good values. As CEO of Intelligent Waves, he's built a culture where almost half the workforce are veterans. And his commitment earned national recognition for veteran hiring and transition support. What's truly unique, Tony bridges the service-driven perspective with trailblazing innovation, founding Peak Neuro LLC, a neuroscience-powered company helping veterans transform mental health challenges like PTSD and TBI into resilience using accessible technology. The way he's translated struggle into a mission for healing and seen measurable outcomes for special operators and trauma survivors is deeply motivating. So very excited to have Tony on.
I love this kind of stuff. It focuses on, I think it helps with people that have ADHD too, hypothetically, not that I have it, but if I did, I think that these type of therapies can be really beneficial. Hypothetically, again, I'll say.
Yes, I'm very thankful for therapies like this. And I'm thankful for Tony coming on. And I'm thankful to learn what he has to say. But Joe, Thanksgiving's just right around the corner. What are you thankful for?
I'll be honest with you, man. I'm thankful that my wife has an identical twin, and I'll tell you why. Have you ever had a favorite food that your spouse makes?
You got a backup ready to go.
Oh, yeah. No.
I'm sure she's married. Let's talk to her husband.
I actually met my wife through my brother-in-law. He was a coworker at Walmart, and I went to school with him. And you know, back when you're a kid, all it takes is long hair, and you both drive Pontiacs, and you're like best friends. We both had long hair and drove Pontiacs. Like, okay, cool. We're obviously going to be best friends, right? And
did you have a ponytail, dude?
I have. Oh yeah. I had a ponytail. I had shoulder length hair for most of my high school. So his car broke down, or he wrecked it. He probably wrecked it. But he asked me to give him a ride to his girlfriend's house, and I took him over there, and she walks out on the front porch, and I'm like, how did that happen? How are you linked to that? And does she have a sister? And he said she has an identical twin sister. And I said, wait, I wasn't prepared for the answer. I was like, is she single? And he said, yes. And she wants to stay that way. Yeah, she wanted to stay that way.
I'm sorry. We both have Pontiacs. We both have ponytails and twin sisters.
Yeah. I mean, come on. So he's like a command sergeant major in the Air Force now. He went from, being a long-haired ponytail man like me to being a leader. And I'm really proud of him. But the reason why I'm thankful that my wife has a twin, because if you've ever had a favorite food that your wife makes, like several favorite foods, and so when Thanksgiving hits, you're like, I want you to make all these things. And she's like, I'm only one person. No, I've got two. So I'm getting all the food that I like made by my wife and her clone.
Because they have enough people to cook it all for you.
That's right. Right. And I'm not helping. I'm moral support.
And
I'll help get rid of it.
What's your contribution to the Thanksgiving affair?
Number one eater.
No, I will start it, when that awkward moment when nobody is grabbing a plate yet. I can be that guy. But also, I will go out and get everything for them. We'll do all the shopping that's needed. If anything, any emergency runs or anything like that, which is not equal. I know it's not equal to the cooking, but our goal is to keep the kids away from the kitchen and to give them everything they need to make anything that pops in their heads, and to pay for everything. So that's
probably also a couple healthy servings of comedic relief, I would assume.
Yeah.
Like when things are just kind of going too normal, like there's probably an infusion of humor by you.
So last year, the brine cooler got sat up on the counter and fell over. and it was like 2 inches of raw turkey juice covered the entire kitchen. It was so bad that it was funny. It was so bad, like that whole floor of their house got cleaned in a way that no one would, with any right mind, would ever go that deep cleaning something.
Bleach,
So,
Lysol.
oh, it was everything. It was like there was like 4 different layers. So I think my goal is also to make sure that nobody sits the brine cooler up on the counter.
That's it. That's good. Stacey,
I feel like that's a good contribution. It saved
what
them
about
4
you?
hours of cleaning.
What about you, Stacey? What are you thankful for?
Oh, I'm always thankful for my husband.
Hmm.
He's tremendous. Of course, all of my animals, and my sister is my neighbor now, so I'm thankful that she's close. I think that's really changed my life. So, just all around good people. I'm thankful for good people. What about you, Adam?
Well, that was a perfect transition. I'm going to go super cornball here, but I'm thankful for all the alphas. I'm
Oh,
think,
good.
yeah, I'm, we've gotten to meet a few of them over the years at the convention and the different events,
And we got Army Navy coming up. We'll
we
run
do
into
have
a few
Army
more.
Navy coming up. It's going to be awesome seeing Army destroy Navy again, just like last year, and
Oof.
it's just so great. But I really do. I enjoy those interactions, and I'm thankful for everybody that takes the time to listen in and go on this journey with us. So thank you.
I'll piggyback off of that like a good first sergeant. and just say that this is one of my favorite things that I get to do, and you're
Hang out
absolutely
with me and
right.
Stacey.
This is fun.
Hey, that's your favorite thing, hanging out with me and Stacey, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Stacy and
that's what
you,
you're talking about. Yeah, and I'm thankful for all of you guys. I really am. It's one of my most favorite things to do too. And it's light, it's joyful, it's often heart-centered. Joe's probably gonna cry. We're gonna go down some rabbit holes.
It's been a few episodes, okay? I've manned up.
Yeah.
Well, alphas, like Adam said, we love you and we appreciate you. Please stick around. We'll be back with Mr. Tony right after the break. Hey there, Legionnaires and sports fans. This is Joe Worley, American Legion member and Navy veteran, and I am so excited that the American Legion is continuing their tradition of support for the Army-Navy game presented by USAA, the first veteran service organization to sponsor America's game in its 126-year history. That's right. The greatest rivalry in sports just got even more meaningful for veterans like us. We're honored to stand behind the incredible student athletes that are not only competing on the field, but are also committed to protecting the freedoms we hold dear. And through this sponsorship, we're shining a spotlight on our primary mission, Be the One, our fight to end veteran suicide. So mark your calendars, tune in to CBS on December 13th at 3 p.m. Eastern to watch Navy take on Army in this epic showdown. To learn more about the American Legion's involvement and our mission, visit legion.org/Army-Navy game. Let's cheer on our team, support our mission, and show the world what it means to be a Legionnaire. Go Navy!
Today we're joined by Peak Neuro founder Tony Crescenzo. Peak Neuro was originally deployed and refined with warfighters and combat pilots, where split-second decisions mean life or death, and has since been applied to veterans dealing with PTSD. How does Peak Neuro work? Well, we're going to find out shortly. Tony, welcome to the Tango Alpha Lima podcast.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
Tony, thank you for your service and welcome to the show. I have so many questions, but first I want to get to know you a little bit pre-service. Where are you from originally, and what drew you to the Marine Corps specifically?
That's a loaded question. So I'm originally from South Philadelphia, and I grew up in South Philadelphia. I'm old, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. I grew up in the neighborhood that Rocky ran in when Rocky was made. So very blue collar. My grandfather was a mechanic. My father was a mechanic. My uncles are mechanics. My cousins were all mechanics. And when I was 12 years old, my father took me aside and said, "Anthony, it's a good thing you're smart, because if you had to make a living with your hands, you'd starve. So go to school." How I got to be in the Marine Corps. So basically, I grew up in kind of a hybrid. My grandfather had a farm after he retired, so I spent most of my summers on a farm, and that was a great experience. But sort of that in a combination of a Sopranos episode in the South Philly world. My parents divorced. My mother remarried a Navy officer, and we were stationed in Hawaii during the 70s. It was about 1974, 1973. And my stepfather had a friend he had served on the Saipan with. He was a Marine helicopter pilot. A little guys, like 5'7", 140 pounds soaking wet, smoked these big cigars that were bigger than him. And he had stopped to visit with us for a week or two as he was rotating back from Vietnam. And I just thought he was everything that a cool guy was. This guy was like a little Doberman, just full of piss and vinegar and fire and funny as hell. And I didn't learn until later that he was on his way back from Vietnam to get the Medal of Honor.
Really?
He was a Huey pilot. And the story that my stepfather tells is really good. They're sitting in the wardroom on the Saipan, and an alarm goes off. There's a platoon of Marines who's pinned on a beach. They can't get into water because of sea snakes and sharks, and the North Vietnamese are just chewing them up. So they sent a CH-46 and 2 Hueys to escort it. The 46 gets shot up and can't land, so it returns to the ship. The other Huey gets shot down, and here's one guy in a Huey gunship rotating over the beach with his machine guns while this group of Marines are trying to get on it. And you guys are all veterans. I don't know how many have ever been on a Huey, but it holds maybe 14 people. And they overloaded this thing to the point where the skids were hitting the top of the waves as he's coming back. And
Wow.
he gets back into the ship and slams it onto the flight deck. And by the way, when this alarm went off, they were in the wardroom watching the John Wayne movie. So he was pretty pissed. He had to put a cigar down, get on the helicopter. So he comes back to get his debrief, and the pilot's debriefing room, takes off his helmet, and an AK-47 round falls out of the helmet.
Oh my gosh.
So those of you, who haven't been on a Huey, it's like every other helicopter in the military, right? All of the armor is around the flight crew and the engines. So I remember the first time I got on like a 53, they tell you don't lean back because your deuce gear is going to smash it's going to go right through the skin of the helicopter. Something like 300 bullet holes in this thing. And he survived and saved all these Marines' lives.
Oh my gosh.
So I just thought that was really, an amazing guy. I didn't know it at the time, but later, kind of a interesting testament to his character, but also sad is when he came back, he got the medal. They asked what he wanted to do, and he said, "I'd really like to be a jet pilot. I want to transition to jets." And so they reassigned him to Pensacola, and he was a biker, of course. He had a motorcycle, and if you haven't been to Pensacola, there's a drawbridge in town that takes you to the base, and he liked to jump that drawbridge with his bike.
Oh my gosh.
And one day he didn't make it, literally.
Oh my
and on the way down,
God.
every witness to that tragedy swore that he screamed "Oorah" the whole way down into the water. So when literally years later, I was in college and I made a wrong turn on the way to a Charles Kuralt lecture, and I ran into the Marine recruiter, and I thought, what a great way to spite your parents. And so boys and girls at home, if you join the Marine Corps to spite your parents, that never ends well. Keep that in mind.
Well, I think I'd rather join the Marines to spite my parents than have it be an alternative to prison. So I think that's how my uncle ended up in the Marine Corps.
Well, at that time, there was a lot of people like that in the Marine Corps.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. So tell me a little bit about your Marine Corps. What you went into the Marines. What was your occupation? How long did you stay?
I had a very, very atypical Marine Corps career, and I'll start with this. I know there's a corpsman on here who is a Marine in every way, and thank you for your service, by the way.
Appreciate you, brother.
Marines are we're definitely different than most people. You got to be crazy just to even want to do that kind of thing. But I went to boot camp. I have a kind of interesting Marine Corps story. I went to OCS when I was in college, graduated from both increments of the PLC program, was 16 credits away from graduation, got kicked out of school because I didn't have any money. And so I just enlisted and thought, well, I'll just pick it up that way. And by the way, going to boot camp with a service record that has OCS in there does not make drill instructors like you very much. So I had a really interesting initial experience. I was I'm a Beirut veteran, but not permanent personnel. I worked for 3rd Land Battalion. I was assigned to a FAD battery, and I rotated in and out of Beirut for 2 years. And when I transitioned back from that role to Beirut, this is my first enlistment. I was a corporal. I was assigned to work at an inspector instructor staff. And if you don't know what that is there's an interesting dichotomy in the Marine Corps. They take the top 10% of Marines and they put them into one of 3 things: recruiter, which no Marine on the planet ever wants to be; drill instructor, which, yeah, me, I'd love to do that; and something called independent duty inspector instructors. And these are the permanent personnel who work with reserve units. And there's 10 Marines and a Navy corpsman. So I thought it was weird. It's my first enlistment, just coming back from a combat tour. And I was assigned to an artillery battery reserve unit in Trenton, New Jersey. And I just wasn't really sure what that was about. And then I got orders to Headquarters Marine Corps for a temporary assignment, which we call TAD and everybody else calls TDY, where I discovered that I was not working for Gulf Battery 314. I was working for the Naval Investigative Service, which is, you guys know, as NCIS. And by the way, if you're watching the show and it looks really cool, they're not cool. Back then, NIS agents were the guys that washed out of the FBI Academy. So no glamour in that at all. And I knew I was in trouble when I showed up at the NIS office in Philadelphia, and they took my dental records and fingerprints in case somebody found me in a dumpster. So I wound up spending almost 3 years undercover in a drug and computer fraud investigation. And I was a corporal. So I was the most junior Marine on the staff. I was assigned there to work as, I'd been cross-trained as a programmer, and then they made me a clerk. What's called a unit diary clerk, pays everybody. And it turned out that the admin chief of this unit, permanent personnel, who's a gunnery sergeant, was creating people who didn't exist in the manpower management system and paying them. He created checks, and he had access to the safe with the ID card. So every month he'd get a check and he would go cash it over at Broad Street National Bank. And because the audits happened on 90 days, people would show up, and then back then you could drop from the unit. And that's how he made money. So after about 8 months, we kind of figured out what he was doing. And he and I walked into this bank, and every teller was a 45-year-old NIS agent. And I thought I was done. I thought, great, I can go back to the fleet. This was a little bit strange, a little intimidating. And then it turned into a drug investigation. And it turned out that most of the rest of the staff, including the first sergeant, were involved in selling, using, and importing cocaine. So I spent the next almost 2 years of my life there walking into rooms I wasn't sure I was ever going to walk out of. I'd been on a bunch of drug buys. They were every month we had a piss test, because back then you got them every month. They paid the corpsman, the Navy corpsman who was on the staff, to give the bottles to the first sergeant. He'd take it to his house, and they would use their children's urine to get over the piss test. So 3 years into that, they all get charged, and we went to a funeral detail. We come back, and there's a swarming with NIS agents. Everybody's now under arrest except for 3 people on staff. The I&I, the captain, the battery commander, was relieved. That was the permanent personnel, who'd done nothing wrong, by the way. He's just a guy who was in everybody's way. And turned out that if you don't know this and you're listening, Marine Corps is really small. And back then, everybody knew everybody. So when these senior Marines to me got relieved, they were replaced by friends of theirs. And turned out that the battalion commander who had ordered this investigation, PCS to Okinawa, nobody heard from him. Nobody knew who he was. And all of a sudden, I was just some guy who was a clerk there, and nobody thought to move me. So while I'm preparing to testify against these 9 Marines, twice I was, there were 2 attempts on my life. There were 4 witnesses. 2 had been, 1 died under suspicious circumstances. 2 were murdered. So I was basically the sole surviving witness in this general court-martial that these people were going to. And I was stuck working in a building with them. I had written letters to the Sergeant Major of the Marine Corps, written letters to my congressman, and nothing happened. Along the way, senior Marines all know each other. The first sergeant had friends. The new first sergeant was a friend of his, and they did their best to either impeach my testimony or just drive me crazy enough that whatever was going to happen wasn't going to be bad for them. And at one point, after they had all been convicted, the new first sergeant wanted to charge me I'd taken some leave. And when I came back, those of you who have served, you have a lot of collateral duties. You're the male NCO this week, and you're the recreation NCO next week. And they had a whole bunch of stuff that, disobedience of lawful orders, dereliction of duty. I didn't do this and being 20 minutes late to work.
Which is 15 minutes early, so only 5 minutes late.
Right.
You got it, Joe.
So I declined office hours because it really was about impeaching my testimony. I declined the office hours, went to a court martial, and I was convicted at court martial of being 20 minutes late to work and fined $20. And that night, I got a phone call from my monitor, headquarters Marine Corps, telling me that he was instructed to send me anywhere in the world I wanted to go. The congressional liaison had reached out. This was clearly an inappropriate thing for them to do. And I said, send me to the closest place in my home of record because fuck you, I'm getting out of the Marine Corps. And I was transferred to Garden City, New York, to another inspector staff where they lost all my security clearances, made me a files clerk, and I sat in a room with no windows for 8 months. And no one wanted to PT or go to a poker game or talk to a guy. I just came from a unit that was notorious. Almost everybody went to jail. Now, that's the bad news. And imagine what it's like in an organization whose motto is Semper Fidelis, always faithful. We never leave our dead or wounded on the battlefield. We got your back, and nobody's got your back. In fact, I learned then that corporals are pretty expendable versus a first sergeant or staff sergeant. So 8 months to the day after that happened, the aide-de-camp to the commandant then, PX Kelly, walked into that reserve center with a check for $20. They had overturned my court martial, a meritorious promotion, a medal, and a letter, because a certificate of commendation from the commandant, and a copy of the 4-page letter of apology he had written to my parents. And I was then kind of reinstituted. They asked if I wanted to go back to counterintelligence duties, and I went down and interviewed, and of course that went really well. So at that point, I didn't think I could stay in the Marine Corps because it was very small, and I was pretty sure that somebody's friend was going to, find out something at some point. So it was interesting. I was in New York at the time. I got an offer from a very high growth technology company. It turned out being cross-trained as a programmer was a pretty good deal. That was a skill that was in great demand. And
what year was that, Tony?
That was 1987.
Wow.
So you guys are still using 5.5-inch floppies, I take it?
8-inch floppies, right? The first portable computer I worked on was called the Green Machine, and it was portable because you could put it in a Jeep, right? An old M151 Jeep, not even a Humvee. So I wound up working for 3 of the craziest people you'd ever meet, but they were just incredible leaders, incredible business people, taught me a lot. 2 years later, that company was the largest M&A transaction in New York for that year. And I made some money. I learned a lot about what was going on. My transition was a little challenging. Back then, it wasn't cool to be in the military, right? But I remember when I was on active duty, people either thought I was a Nazi or I was in a punk band. And when I got out, I was working at Merck, the pharmaceutical company. And if you've ever been up to that building, it's 300 yards long. It's this giant manufacturing plant with offices in it. And I worked in this pit full of developers and programmers. And there was this data scientist who, all you have to do is say Jersey and you already know the kind of personalities of people who are there. And this guy was kind of an asshole to everybody. He was very condescending. And I'm sure you all know that in the Marine Corps, we don't have HR. If you have interpersonal problems at work, it's 20 minutes behind the squad bay and let's go have a beer. That's the culture I sort of grew up in. So I thought, well, one day I looked at the guy and I said, listen, you talk to me like that again, I'm going to knock you the fuck out. And he thought I was kidding. And the next thing I know, I'm chasing him out the building, 300 yards through offices and cube farms. And everybody's wondering what's going on. And of course, he's a no sock wearing BMW driving guy. So he gets in his BMW and drives away. And by the way, before cell phones. So as soon as he leaves the building, I look at my watch and I think, boy, this is the part of my career where I work for UPS. I'll be a delivery driver. And 20 minutes later, sure enough, my boss calls and says, I need you to come up here. So I pack up my gear and I walk up to the office and sit down, tell me what happened. And just like I told you, the guy was kind of a jerk, not just to me, but to everybody. And I warned him. And my boss had this really funny look on his face. And he said, I know you just got out of the military and Marines are a little different than everybody else. And I'm pretty sure you weren't going to hurt the guy. To which I replied, oh, no, if I'd have caught him, I'd have beat the shit out of him. He just laughed and said, well, be that as it may, he is kind of a jerk. So we just fired him. Go back to work. Don't hurt anybody. And
Yes.
I love that.
Yes.
That's not how I thought that story was going to go, Tony.
And
There
that's
is
what I knew
justice in the
threatening
world.
people could get you places.
I really thought that I was on candid camera, and it turned out. And he didn't tell me. This is what I love about this guy. He never said a word. But later, I found out he was a 3 combat tour Air Force veteran who had flown 31 combat missions. But for him, where would I be? The sort of bad part of that is, and like I'm sure Joe and Joe in particular, I know Stacy, you've had some of this experience as well. It's you don't even realize if you have PTSD, you don't know you have it. You just think everybody else is messed up, right? Hey, that guy on the road started it, right? And I'm just going to punish him now for doing what he was doing. And I was in that. I had no idea how angry I was. My first wife would tell you, and my second wife would tell you, and my daughter would tell you, and anybody who's ever. I had friends that we'd go on a trip somewhere and they'd sleep in the other bed in the hotel room with me and swore they'd never do it again because of the maniacal laughing and things that I would say in my sleep. And I'd wake my wife, both of my wives up, 3-4 times a week, screaming in the middle of the night, and anger issues, and it was all the things that we're all kind of familiar with. And I didn't even really know it. I just thought, well, let me put it this way: my second wife, who's still my current wife, when I was 55, said to me that I had been in more fights than all the men she'd ever dated in her life combined. And I said, I never started a fight in my life. And she'd say, yeah, no, you just get them all pissed off, and then they swing at you, and you beat the crap out of them and go, yeah, I had no choice. And that was it. I thought, bar fights were kind of fun, and most people who know how to fight don't fight, and most who don't are fun to beat up. And it was that way for me for 30 years. Really like 0 to fuck you in 10 seconds kind of a guy.
So you're saying the bar fights were your drawbridge moment?
Kind of, yeah. But there, look, Marines just in general are screwed up. But those are, to me, that's just how you get your cardio, right? Or it was until I had an opportunity, and believe it or not, it was completely out of the blue. I didn't even know what I was doing. I read an article on quantum physics that was written in 1983 and wound up sampling a technology around brainwave entrainment that changed me fundamentally in 6 days. So much so that my ex-wife, my wife, my daughter, my friends, business associates, all wanted to know what I was doing because things were so different. And it was such a transformative experience that I decided to co-found Peak Neuro with a gentleman who's been doing this for 31 years, got 31 years of neuroacoustic entrainment. We worked with, we brought in a bunch of neuroscientists, people from elite universities to help us put it all together. And, the whole goal here was to make this available to all veterans, and not just veterans. Trauma is trauma. Doesn't matter whether you've been shot at in a military uniform or shot at in a police uniform or robbed or beaten or anything that, that gets into the way. And that sort of became, for me, along the way, I'm running the 8th business that I've founded 2 companies and sold them. I've run 6 companies as what most people would call a professional CEO. I'm the guy that venture capitalists or private equity or private owners hire for transformation of businesses to go through stage of growth or get to a liquidity event. So it's been it's been a real experience for me over the last 4 years since we sort of conceived and then put this together. But I can tell you today, we're working with, I'll give you one example, and you'll hear his name, and he's agreed that we can talk about him. His name is Mark Green. He is a 24-year retired Navy SEAL, 8 enlisted, 5 as an officer, 21 TBIs, 12 combat deployments, PTSD, doesn't sleep, hypervigilant. Raise your hand if you go to a restaurant and you got to sit with your back to the door, right, or your back to the wall. You got to watch that door. In 2 months, Mark went from that to sleeping 6 hours a night uninterrupted, no hypervigilance. His PTSD is about 80% resolved. His TBIs are virtually gone. His brain fog is gone. He's engaged. And he wrote a book about it. He wrote a book about his experience called Unsealed. And Paramount and Skydance are making a series about that. Interesting enough, as we were talking before the show, Every time they run that series, the fund, Simplify in America's Fund, the fund and an organization I'm also on the board of called Warriors Ethos will get a check for that. And Mark is an extraordinary guy. I mean, he's got, a lot of us have stories. Mark's stories usually beat everybody else's. He's also a former Division I college football player, but he's one of 23 veterans so far that we've gone through the entire process, that you come out the other side and you are better.
So
go ahead.
That actually ties in exactly with what I wanted to ask. I wanted to jump in before you answered it, and I lost my job. Peak Neuro. So I got involved with a little bit of this through the fund, actually.
With neurofeedback.
And it was fantastic.
Yeah.
What the thing that surprised me the most was how quickly you see benefit. I mean, within the second time you do it, you can say, "Oh, this could really be huge." So, but I want, in your words, so it helps veterans transform mental health challenges into resilience. And like I said, I've done some related classes and exercises myself, and it's really interesting, the approach. So for our listeners who may be a little skeptical, because neuroscience sounds like gobbledygook for some people, but it's neuroscience powered technology. Can you describe some of the accessible technological methods you use and how they work differently to other therapeutic methods? Can you explain a little bit about what you do?
It's a great question. I'll give you a comparison, right? If you have PTSD, if you have trauma, if you have anxiety, if we talk about rumination a lot, and here's a great example. If you're listening to this podcast, if you're on this podcast, close your eyes and imagine a time when you walked out of a room and the first thing you thought when you walked out is, why did I say that? Or why did they say that? What did that guy mean? And you can't get that out of your head. Like, you're just thinking about it all the time. Why did I do that? Why did that happen? That's rumination. So when you're resolving trauma, you typically go to psychotherapy. And psychotherapy is about meaning making. It's about narrative building. I'm going to go to talk to someone, and I've got this autobiography. It's my life story. And something in my life story happened that I can't make sense of. I'm stuck in it. A lot of us, I know, Joe, you're a veteran of Fallujah 1. There's still 8 guys a year committing suicide, right? Your body comes home, but your mind doesn't. This is the 8th company that I've run in the last 5 years. I've had 18 employees, all veterans. And by the way, the company I run, Intelligent Waves, second best company for veterans on monster.com. It's a great company. It's founded by veterans. It's run by veterans. But somebody has a problem. We had a guy sitting on the runway at Eielson Air Force Base, Air Force veteran. Smell the wrong thing, hear the wrong thing, and boom, you're right back in it. You're right back in it. And of course, his wife calls and says, "What do I do?" He's in Alaska. I got the call. I don't know, Joe, if you remember Sergeant Major Kent, retired Sergeant Major in the Marine Corps. I call him twice a year and say, "Hey, Carlton, can you get me a program to put this guy in?" And it's hard to do. So typically when you're going to go to one of these programs, you start with psychotherapy. So narrative building, meaning making. I'm going to talk to someone and try and figure out how this thing in my autobiography actually fits. And by the way, to have that conversation, I got to relive it. And even harder to relive it, I don't know if anybody on this call or in general has been to the VA. I went to the VA in the 90s and I had a counselor I thought was going to be great, a therapist. And turned out he was a 3 combat tour Vietnam veteran. I'm like, oh, this guy's seen tons more than I have. This is great. And 3 sessions in, he says, "I can't treat you. You're triggering me." It's the kind of experience that you have. So meaning making, narrative building, by the way, takes place here in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex of your brain. This is the executive network where decisions, rumination, and cognition happen. And
Tony,
sorry?
For the alphas who are listening and can't see you, can you kind of describe where you're pointing to?
I'm pointing to my forehead.
Okay.
Literally your forehead and right up here, just the very front of your brain is the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. That's where narrative happens. That's where thinking happens. That's where cognition, rumination, anxiety, and stress reside. And if I were to look at an EEG for someone who is suffering from anxiety, what I would see is, you heard the story, left brain, right brain, right? Your brain hemispheres work together, but when one side is really pumping out energy and the other side isn't, that's when you get If it's the right side, you're going to get anxiety, stress, trauma. If it's the left side, you're actually in a state of equanimity, right? And when they're balanced, that's like a snow. I call it the snowshoe effect, right? If I step in 3 feet of snow with a leg, I'm going to go right to the bottom. But if I wear a snowshoe, the weight is borne by the entire, much larger footprint. So your emotional and cognitive well-being really rests on whole brain coherence and interhemispheric synchrony. And what we see is an imbalance in the front part of the brain and a lot of what's called beta and gamma waves that express themselves. And those are very high frequency and require a lot of energy. Typically takes about 12 watts of energy to have a thought. But when that thought gets stuck in your head, you're in overdrive and it's metabolically inefficient. It's tiring. It gives you headaches. If you ever get that headache right in front of your brain or the one right behind your eyes, for a lot of people who get anxiety, that's gamma waves. That's an overabundance of prefrontal gamma that's just overloading your prefrontal cortex. Now, if you've ever fallen asleep, and as you're falling asleep, you see a picture or you have a complete memory of something, a symbol, rather than a narrative, that happens in the back of your brain. That happens in the occipital and parietal cortex. And that's where symbolism happens. That's where when the solution comes to you as a whole, you don't go from A, B, C, D, you just get the whole thing at once. So what Peak Neuro does, and this is just for trauma, we do a lot of different things, but basically what we do is we create a frame. It's not brainwashing. It's not giving you thoughts. If you're going to run a marathon, you got to be in a frame of mind to run a marathon. If you're going to study, you have to be in a frame of mind to study. If you're going to sleep, you have to be in a frame of mind to sleep. So we create the frame by adjusting more than just a single or group of brainwaves, but we really adjust the frame of how your brain is working. And in this case, what we do is we shut down the front of your brain. We literally suppress your brain's ability to create rumination, cognition, anxiety. All of those things get pushed way down. And we work on what's called the anticular cingulate cortex, the anticular cingulate gyrus, which modulates emotion. And we suppress that. And we open up that whole back of your brain. And what happens is in therapy, you have what's called semantic resolution. Semantics is just language, right? We're going to talk about it. But what Peak Neuro does is not a replacement, it's an adjunct. What Peak Neuro does, it allows you to digest anxiety, stress, trauma, allows you to adjust it somatically with your body. So when you do this, you don't necessarily even remember what happened as you're listening to a set of headphones and you lay back in a chair. You had a whole bunch of crazy things go on, but you don't suffer from that. You can actually experience an episode of the original trauma, but since we're suppressing emotion, you watch it like it's a movie and you're not involved. I don't know if any of you have been to like the immersive PTSD therapy. I had to watch this movie over and over again, and I still can't watch it. I'm 64 years old. I still can't watch that movie without crying. On the other hand, I can talk about things now that I could never talk about before without emotion because it doesn't own me anymore. It's something that happened that isn't part of me. It's just an event. So what we're doing is we're changing the way that your brain works and creating a frame for you to digest that trauma in a way that allows you to come out of it feeling take 19 people who went through a trial with this, 18 of them come out and you ask the same question. Give me one word to describe how you feel. And it's clear. I feel clear. Now, it doesn't happen overnight, but here's the other thing. There was a study conducted in 2021 by the Air Force. The farther away you are from your home when you get PTSD treatment, the lower the odds of success. If you go away to a 1 month or 2 week or 1 week program, you got about a 30% success rate. The closer you are to your home, the better. So if you have a set of headphones, you can use Peak Neuro in your home without stigma, without talking to anybody. The difference is, and so Joe, to your thing, I don't know how long you were in the neurofeedback program, but you got to get in a car, you got to drive to a facility, you have to sit in front of a computer, you have to do the work, and it usually takes somewhere between 26 to 56 weeks for that to become what's called a trait level change. So you can go and you can have a state level change for the 30 minutes or 40 minutes that you're doing this, you'll feel great. And 2 hours later, your brain goes right back to the way it was. Peak Neuro creates trait level changes, permanent changes in your neurophysiology in about a month. Inside, it might be 21 days. On the outside, depends on individuals. And the other thing is, for most neurofeedback, ultrasound, focused ultrasound, you have to go to a facility. You're going to do it. It's 30 minutes long. That takes you away from your life. And if there's a stigma attached, there's there are other issues to that. This allows you, and by the way, it's one size fits all. No one says, let me tweak some things for you. Well, what we do, and I'll show you these headphones. We don't make these. These are from another vendor. That's an EEG device. So I can put this on you, have you sit down for 10 minutes and get a profile. And the funny thing is that while we all have brains, we all have electrical systems in our brains. Every brain is different. Your neurophysiology is the accumulated adaptation of your brain to your life. So it's as individual as a fingerprint. And we're able to now, with an AI that we put together that has millions and millions of research studies, EEGs of special operators, Fortune 500 CEOs, Tibetan monks, whole populations of people, we're able to use your individual neurology as the way to build the entrainment so that this works specifically for you. So the difference between what we do and neurofeedback, for example, is neurofeedback, you got to go somewhere, you have to work with a professional. It's a lot more expensive. It's a lot more time commitment, and it takes months and months and months. It can take a year. We do it in your home with you, tailored to you, and it takes a couple of months. Not only that, but we can show you, this is the great part about it, is you might feel better, but are you better? And what we can show you is the individual changes in your neurophysiology and compare that, say, to your age and gender cohort or your age and military experience cohorts. It's interesting. I'm a Marine. The closest thing that the Marines are, the closest thing to Marines that the Army has are Rangers, because they're both crazy. But the Delta guys, and I work with a bunch of them. We're treating two Delta guys right now, retired sergeant majors, killed more people than cancer, suffering from PTSD, 35 TBIs, all kinds of issues. Their neurophysiology is completely different. They're very quiet. They're the thinkers, right? The Rangers are like Marines. We're the doers. So the ability to tailor this at the individual level is what makes it so powerful. Sorry, I feel like I'm dominating the conversation, so I'm going to shut up here for a minute.
Oh, Tony, thank you so much. It's really incredible to hear you explain it and kind of walk through it. Also, your rich history and lived experience as a Marine, but then also kind of glossing over quite quickly your corporate career and all the organizations that you've led. I feel that you're a real systems level change agent and able to drive a lot of things forward. And so I feel like, this was my question. I could go so many different directions, but also the brain is really something that I learned more about than I ever could have possibly imagined on this trajectory of veteran mental health. My brother and I, the first nonprofit that we started is called Warrior Angels Foundation, specifically to raise funds to provide a neuro-restorative protocol, anti-inflammatory, to rebalance the hormones in the brain that have been affected from the physiological damage, right, to a TBI. So as you're explaining all this, and then obviously, the advancements in these, diagnostic tests and therapies like Peak Neuro and what you have all the way to the neuro-restorative, then you have folks like, Joe Dispenza that are teaching the neuroscience of change all the way to the meditative, how to access between the conscious and the subconscious with the elevated emotion in an attention to be able to, change that present moment of now that we all live in into that future state that you want to be in. Versus like the alternative therapies, like, the psychedelic assisted therapies, which are kind of like the easy button to be able to help you to get there into those states. And then the studies that are coming out, and the new research, right. And really, I think like the last great frontier is for us to understand is the brain and is human consciousness. And nobody really fully has a good explanation for what that is and what we ultimately are. So I guess I would, maybe the first thing I should say is just that I'm a big fan of yours and your work and of organizations and therapies like this. I believe that you are on the forefront of the future of health and welfare and medicine. I believe that the brain is one of the most valuable pieces of real estate, in our body. And you don't think about brain health. We're not really raised to think about the things that we consume and how we might create a neuropermissive environment or what that even is. And yet it regulates every single thing that happens and every thought that happens from the time that you're in the womb until what happens when you transition to the next state of consciousness and what it's connected to. And so I think that that's such an important part of, and I've kind of thought about it as there's the recovery aspect of it. Like I've had some kind of significant insult or injury, and it could be, psychological over time, but there's deep recovery that needs to take place. Then there's the optimization, kind of component, thinking maybe more like, I was in the service. I didn't have anything too terribly crazy from a physiological standpoint, or I'm an executive, high function in that prefrontal cortex all the time. And how do I make that cortex work better for me? How do I optimize that? And then, it's, hey, I've kind of done those things. I know how to maintain myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. How do I maintain that, that wellness? How do I, for as long as I can? And so to me, it seems like there's so many different layers, of depth that can and need to be reached. So I guess maybe my question for you, kind of coming back to the product in Peak Neuro, what was it that kind of put this on your radar? How long have you been working on this? And how do you guys think about it from maybe those just surface level, those three different layers, from the recovery side, the optimization, and the wellness? And maybe you can just talk from like a practical standpoint of different kind of, protocols that you may have with the equipment that would address those.
Boy, that's a lot to unpack. But let me go back
Briefly.
Since you opened the woo door, I'll take a quick step into it. So, if you want to read an interesting theory about consciousness, not about the brain, and all the time that I've spent doing the research and learning and working on building this, and our advisors for Peak Neuro include staff, professor from Harvard University's medical school who's a neurosurgeon. He's the chief neurosurgeon at Brigham Women's Hospital. Arnaud Delorme is the inventor of EEG Lab, the software that neuroscientists use to interpret EEGs. He's one of our advisors. Mm-hmm. We have a team at Columbia University that we've worked with, where I've done a lot of presenting papers there. Marjorie Willicott is a professor at the University of Oregon, who is the president of the American Academy of Post-Materialist Sciences. That's a big one. And every year there is the world's foremost conference on consciousness takes place at the University of Arizona. And every other year they have that conference internationally. And this year it was in Barcelona, Spain. There is a theory of consciousness called the ORC-OR theory. And it was written by Sir Roger Penrose, who's a Nobel Prize winner in physics, and Stuart Hameroff, who is he's a professor at the University of Arizona, who's an anesthesiologist. It was a fringe theory for a very long time, and it postulates that inside of our neurons are something called microtubules, and that they vibrate at different frequencies. It's kind of funny. Mm-hmm. We say neuroacoustic entrainment, and people say, well, it's just sound, but sound is nothing more than vibration. And what we're really doing is we're stimulating the microtubules inside of your neurons and creating a vibratory effect, which changes consciousness. So the brain isn't, I used to think the brain was a step down transformer that let us understand the larger consciousness, right? There's this sort of Newtonian physics view of the world and the mechanical view, which only leads you so far. And then you have to get into sort of the quantum field theory, quantum consciousness piece. And then that begins to explain things. So I've since upgraded my sort of perspective to, so by the way, I'd encourage you, you can read that. That's what our technology is really based on, is the ORC-OR theory. But I think the brain isn't a step down transformer. It's a translation engine that allows you to access Carl Jung's, collective unconscious, right? Or the quantum field. And when you can open up a larger aperture to that information, you have access to all kinds of crazy things. I mean, how did this really happen for me? It would blow your mind. I have a home at the beach in Chincoteague. I live in Falls Church, Virginia, right outside of DC. I run a national defense industrial base defense contractor, so that's where I live. But we have this nice beach house. And in 2022, I believe, May of 2022, I had a meeting scheduled with a government organization in the intelligence field that I won't mention. And I Googled directions to a meeting because I was in a place that nobody told me that I'd never known. I've been to this place 1,000 times. And when I Googled it, I found a 1983 declassified Defense Intelligence Agency document about a program that was used in remote viewing. If you're a Joe Dispenza guy, you probably know about remote
I know
viewing.
what you're talking about. Yep.
So I don't care about remote viewing, but I'm a big physics nerd. And I'm thinking, boy, 1983, the shape of the universe and wave particle duality. And in 1983, you couldn't even measure this stuff. And yet in 2022, what was the Nobel Prize for? Wave particle duality. So I looked at my wife, who's also a big nerd, and said, hey, this is pretty cool. They started to use this at this really interesting research institute. I wonder if that place is still around. And it was. So I looked it up, and it's in Virginia. And I thought, well, I'll just go and take that thing. It looks pretty cool. No idea what it was about. None at all. So I go down there and show up in October of 2022. And I thought, holy cow, this was the 6-day transformation. And when I showed up, they have a little in-doc, right? You walk in, hey, what do you expect to get? And I'm like, nothing. I just came on a goof, man. I just wanted to see what the physics was. And the next thing I know, I'm having experiences that you just can't explain, although they're real, right? You can't. This is the place, by the way, where the remote viewers were trained. So, you just asked the question, okay, well, I can remediate certain things, but can I extend beyond remediation into optimization? So I really started this without even knowing on the other side of it, on the optimization meditation frame. And the interesting thing is when you get to the point where we're normalizing, if there's any such thing as normal for a brain, when we're getting you to the place where you're not suffering, the next question is, well, how do I get better? Where can I take this? And what you find is you can go to a lot of places. You open up experiences. A great example, you just talked about psychedelics. My co-founder, Bob Holbrook, who's been doing this for 31 years, we went down to a veterans clinic and we reverse engineered the brainwaves of a veteran and ketamine therapy. And now it doesn't work like ketamine. You don't put on headphones and all of a sudden you're in ketamine. But after about the 10th time you do this, you have a legitimate ketamine experience. I've done it with a psilocybin program, and since I have a security clearance and I'm not allowed to do those kinds of things, I took a reverse engineered psilocybin experience, and it took 7 months of once a week playing around with it. And then one day, I have no personal perspective on how that works, but talking to people, veterans who've had that experience, it was not only like it, but lasted longer and was better because it was natural. Right? You're right. The psychedelics.
Well, we need to get you down to an ibogaine clinic.
I've heard. Trust me. I have friends that done everything. Ayahuasca, the bullfrog stuff. It's crazy stuff, and it's great because it's a shortcut to the place you want to be. But you can get there otherwise. So, one of the interesting side effects of Peak Neuro is if you do it long enough. And by the way, that's the other thing. Neurofeedback is great until you stop. We have a sleep program. I'm I said it before, 64 years old. The average 64-year-old gets 18 to 22% of their sleep is restorative. That's a combination of slow wave sleep and REM sleep. I used that program for about 6 months, haven't used it in a year. Last night, my restorative sleep was 50%. That's about average for me. I get better sleep in 4 hours than other people get in 8. And I haven't used the technology in a while because it just works. It works and it changes the brain state. So there's a side effect of this where if you were to do this for a week straight, 4 or 5 hours a day, I could put an EEG on you and it would look like a Tibetan Buddhist who's meditating, who's been doing it for 30 years. And if you do it long enough, that is your baseline wake state. And not so much that it's great for, meditation or remote viewing, but it's metabolically efficient. You don't get headaches. You sleep real well. Your physiological stress goes through the floor. And it's funny, we talk about we're down regulating, we're doing post-combat stress reduction. And then for TBIs, we're not fixing a TBI. TBI is a lesion on your brain that destroys neural connections. What we do is we create neuroplasticity, and your brain creates new connections that move around those lesions. We don't resolve the lesions. That's not really possible. But I'll give you a great example. As I learned this, and because we have an AI back end now, I can talk to the AI. And my wife, who's about 7 years younger than me, likes to play pickleball. And I don't get out much because I'm doing all this. And I love pickleball. I think it's kind of cool for old guys with bad knees. And like every other veteran on the planet, I got bad knees, bad back, bad attitude, all that stuff. So I thought, I wonder if I could make like an upregulation exercise and that creates like a flow state. And sure enough, I use this exercise. I go out to play pickleball, and everybody I play with says, "How are you doing that?" And I have to say, "How am I doing what?" Well, how do you know where the ball's going to be before I hit it? I don't. Well, you keep winding up in the right spot. And what it does is it changes the frame rate for your visual perception. So your eyes observe the world at about 24 frames a second. We change the frame rate to 40, and the world slows down in your perception. And we also relax you. So when I play, my physiological stress levels are at about 60% of my normal physiological stress when I'm playing pickleball, because
And is it just binaural beats? Is it binaural beats? And so you're essentially able to pick the program to be able to say what you want to happen, and then you're able to put the brain in that state.
the technology is 5 generations removed from binaural beats. Binaural beats were invented, discovered, however you want to say it, in the late 1800s. And they were sort of perfected in the early 1900s. And from binaural beats, we went to frequency modulation, amplitude modulation, isochronic tones. Bob Holbrook, my co-founder and the genius behind this whole thing, has created what we call fractal neurophase entrainment. So think of an ocean wave. Big waves drive smaller waves, drive littler waves, drive littler waves. And it's a very complex mathematical model that mimics the brain's natural oscillations. One of the problems with binaural beats is it's called the function of habituation. So if I listen to it long enough, my brain just turns it off and says it's not a thing. I can just ignore it. This actually modulates like your brain modulates, so you never get away from it. If you were using binaural beats, 2 things about them. They only work for the time you use them. They don't create trait level change. And the really interesting thing about them is that the way I compare it is if you take a sponge and put it in water, eventually that sponge is going to soak up the water. That's binaural beats. If you take what we do, it's the equivalent of tying a bungee cord to your ankles and shoving you off a bridge. Instead of 6 to 12 minutes into the entrainment, when you start to feel it, it's 4 to 8 seconds. And now you have a lot more time to work on the issues that you want to work on. So again, the unintended consequences of this kind of a thing are things like greater neuroplasticity. And I talked a little bit earlier about our affiliation with some research institutes. I was invited to Columbia University in March of this year to give a talk on AI and education and what we were doing with Peak Neuro. And as it turns out, we did a 6-month random controlled study with 160 participants over a 6-month period. And we measured things like reaction time, stress, threat recognition, because we do this, we work with military folks. And what we discovered was the unintended consequence was we saw a 16% increase in neuroplasticity. So when you think about AI, and AI is kind of interesting, right? This is an iPhone. An iPhone is not really a phone. It's the accumulated knowledge of mankind in a box if you have a ChatGPT app on it, right? It also makes phone calls, which is kind of cool. But at the end of the day, education is AI is the democratization of education. But if you live in my neighborhood, that's pretty cool. In my neighborhood, high income, McLean, Bethesda, Potomac, Georgetown, not only do you have access to education, you have access to good nutrition, you have access to support, you have access to mental health. 6 miles away in Anacostia in Southeast DC, you're dodging bullets to go home. Both your parents work, if you have both parents, and you don't have the same access. You have access to education, you don't have access to learning. But if we can create with Peak Neuro the opportunity for you to get greater neuroplasticity, we now democratize learning. It's a democratization of learning. So the funny thing is, we talked earlier, I'm actually talking to some folks I can't say who they are because we're under NDA. A famous gentleman who was the founder of a famous chain of stores created a foundation that has to give away $450 million a year for 20 years. That's how much money he made. And what we're really looking to do is to create a foundation for Peak Neuro that will make this available to nonprofits and to all veterans, all military, all first responders for free.
That was exactly the follow-up question I was going to ask you. How are you guys making this available and sustainable for
that's really easy.
those
If
lower
you're a
income?
nonprofit, send me an email, write me, contact people through this podcast, and we will make this. The great thing about it is it's an app. You want to use it?
Well,
You need a set of
we have so
headphones.
many American Legion posts, and even I have 50 partner coalition
Yeah.
nonprofits that we help coordinate with. I'm sorry,
You can download
guys.
the app.
I would love to be able to connect with you on this, Tony.
Yeah, we can provision this by what I say is an email address, right? So if everybody has the same email address, right? Peak Neuro is separate from Intelligent Waves, the company that I run. Every month I have an open door Teams call with we're in 26 states, 7 foreign countries, and all the employees get on. And about 2 months ago, one of them said, "Hey, can we get this Peak Neuro stuff?" And I'm thinking, boy, I really screwed that up. I should have thought that a long time ago. So everybody in the company has access to the different exercises.
But that's why it's so important to surround yourself with people that do think like that do think around, because you're always, you're focused on, so we tunnel vision, especially when we're kind of also dealing with our own stuff. We have a tendency to tunnel vision. And on my end of things, I cannot promote Peak Neuro enough. I can't believe it. And so I think the biggest thing that I want to say before I finish up here is that the reason why I think it works that first time is because it shows you another way that you didn't know existed. And I don't know how to describe it any better than that you just have to try it, because I can't even describe Peak Neuro to someone. I can only say you really need to sit down and try it. There's these exercises where it checks your focus, and you think that you're pretty good at stuff like that, and you're not. You can always be better. It reminds you that the mind is a muscle that needs to be exercised in a very specific way. You can't just read and improve yourself. You can't just know about classic conditioning and improve yourself. There's some very specific stuff that Peak Neuro narrows down and focuses in on, those small muscles in the brain that make all the difference, that change the trajectory of the way you think. And I want to thank you so much for what you shared with us today. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to please share how we can get in contact with you. You mentioned as a nonprofit, be prepared to get some emails, because we would love to be able to hook you up with some people that are pushing and want to be better. You've got some really fantastic tools for that, and I'd love people to know more about it.
So 2 things you can do. I'm sure you have show notes when you post these, because I couldn't spell my name until I was 15, so I don't think anybody else could either. So it's tony.crescenzo@peakneuro.com. But you can also, by the way, if you're a veteran and you have PTSD and TBI, and you've been diagnosed with that, we're currently conducting studies on that. We've got partnering with he's retired now from the VA, he's a VA psychiatrist, and we're conducting studies. So you can write to studies@peakneuro.com, or in addition to, go to the App Store, go to Google Play, and look for an app called Peak Neuro. It's free. It's free because it's not everything is on it. But if you send me an email and you're a veteran, you're a first responder, we'll provision that app for you with exercises that are specifically designed to help people who are struggling with anxiety, stress, and those types of issues. Now, I do want to say this. This is what's called neuroadaptive. So if you listen to something and it doesn't feel good, just take the headphones off. We've never had anybody, have anything bad happen. But if you're struggling with PTSD, if you're feeling like you're coming to the end of things, if you're having the kind of thoughts that some of us have, all of us have at some point, go to studies at peakneuro.com and let somebody know. We will work with individual veterans directly. Obviously, we can't do that with everyone, but we're working right now with the Defense Innovation Unit and with parts of the Air Force and the Marine Corps to make this available inside of the military for all service members. We're doing the same thing. As I said, we're working with nonprofits. So if you're a nonprofit and you want to use it to distribute to the folks that are in your cohorts, like Warriors Ethos, for example, we make this available to anybody. We're very happy to make that available to every veteran that you're working with in your nonprofit for absolutely nothing.
Wow. That's absolutely remarkable. Thank you, Tony.
Thanks for having me.
You're a rock star, brother. Thank you again so much for
we got to have you back on. Yeah, we got to have you back on. We need more time.
We need another hour with you, Tony.
Sorry.
I feel like we've only scratched the
because I
surface.
talk too much.
So we're gonna have.
It's good stuff.
No, not at all. I think you're tremendous, and we'll talk to super producer Holly about getting you back on for another hour and doing a follow up. Because what I really want to do is also dive into some of your anecdotal stories about veterans, success stories, and that kind of thing as well. Not just the science, but
if you're open to it, I'd love to come back with Mark Green. He
Let's
would
do
love
it.
to come in and tell his
that'd be great.
Here's a guy who's actually been through it, and he's not 150 years old. He doesn't have Civil War stories to tell.
That sounds great. Tony, thank you again for your service, and thanks for giving us the time to talk about this wonderful endeavor. And Alphas, don't forget to visit peakneuro.com and get that app and reach out to them for all the incentives. It's an amazing opportunity and very generous from Tony and his crew. Again, Alpha, stick around for some scuttlebutt after the break.
My name is Dan Wiley, National Commander of the American Legion. This year, the American Legion family is honoring our nation's 250th birthday with the USA 250 Challenge. Participants can choose 1, 2, or all 3 categories, but I want to talk about the one that means the most to me, mental wellness. Like many of you, I know firsthand the struggles veterans deal with when it comes to our own mental wellness. I am so proud of how the American Legion makes mental wellness a priority. Our Be the One mission is designed to increase mental health awareness and decrease the number of veterans lost to suicide. Our Buddy Check program is designed to ensure that no veteran is left behind. These are worthwhile missions that change lives and save lives. You can improve the lives of our fellow veterans when you join the American Legion Family USA 250 Challenge and complete the mental wellness category. Visit legion.org/USA250 to get registered today.
Okay, Alphas, we hope you had a great break. We have a very animated scuttlebutt today. Stacy?
Yep, on this day in 1940, Woody Woodpecker Woody Woodpecker debuted as an animated cartoon. Woody is an anthropomorphic woodpecker. He was created in 1940 by American cartoonist Walter Benjamin Lance and World War I veteran Ben Bugs Hardaway. Fun fact, Hardaway is a seasoned storyboard artist, previously laid the groundwork for the 2 screwball characters, Bugs Bunny and Daffy Duck.
Wow, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's where he got his nickname, Ben the Bugs Hardaway.
Yeah. What came first, the chicken or the egg there? I'm curious whether he
maybe Bugs Bunny was his alter ego. I don't know.
I just want to say also, imagine you're playing Scrabble and somebody drops anthropomorphic.
Yeah,
like that's just a handshake. It's like, let's just save 20 minutes and call this one.
I'm normally dropping bugs. That's what I drop.
Yeah, me too.
Daffy. Hardaway enlisted in World War I on June 4th, 1917, and was discharged on April 9th, 1919, after serving 14 months in France and a total of 26 months. But he also was led in the 129th Field Artillery Regiment by the future President of the United States, Harry S. Truman. And though not a veteran himself, the cartoonist Walter Lance entertained the troops during the Vietnam War and visited hospitalized veterans. At any rate, Woody's character was designed and evolved over the years from an insane bird with an unusually garish design to a more refined-looking character acting more in the veins of Bugs Bunny. Woody was originally voiced by the prolific voice actor Mel Blanc, who notably served as the voice of the hapless Private Snafu in a series of shorts produced by Warner Brothers as a way of training World War II recruits through the medium of animation. This sounds like something they did for the Marines because they can't read. The films were designed to instruct service personnel about security, proper sanitation habits, yeah, it's definitely for the Marines, booby traps, and other military subjects, and to improve troop morale.
Why do you think they're called booby traps?
You know, I don't know. Joe, quick Google it. Primarily, they demonstrated the negative consequences of doing things wrong. But the main character's name is a play on the military slang acronym SNAFU. Gentlemen, do you know what that means?
Yeah, I know what that means.
Not good.
It's not. Things are real bad.
All big up. You know what I mean. SNAFU was designed by Art Heinemann, the same man who went on to redesign Woody Woodpecker in 1944. So many interconnected threads here. Anyway, so do either of you, Joe or Adam, can you do Woody Woodpecker's signature laugh?
I don't think I can do that anymore.
The guy who made up his laugh and was known for that particular laugh was singer Harry Babbitt. He too was a veteran, but also Navy during World War II, and best known for his hit "The White Cliffs of Dover." So that's a really, really good song. Woody has a motion picture star in on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. And in case you want to visit it, that's at 7000 Hollywood Boulevard. You can go check out Woody's star there.
Woodrow Woodpecker.
He remains an iconic character with a dedicated fan base and continues to be recognizable in pop culture upon new cartoons on platforms like YouTube, and has a status for the mascot of the Universal Studios even to this day. While not as prominent as characters like Mickey Mouse, his legacy is sustained through continued new productions and lasting appeal with classic cartoons. All right, fellas, do either of you know the signature sign-off for Woody Woodpecker? Oh gosh, really? You want me to do it?
I definitely do, but I've got that's all. Folks, stuck in my head. Oh, that is it. Oh yeah. All right.
You better hear that. Let's hear it.
Oh, what? Oh man, no. What?
Oh, that's all, folks.
That's all, folks. I can't do. Oh, shenanigans!
I remember watching the cartoons when I was little.
Yeah.
I watched, the whole reason I watched Woody Woodpecker when I was like little, and then having red hair, for some reason people would call me Woody Woodpecker, and I legitimately hit people in the face over it. And thinking back, I don't know why that was like insulting. Kids say the weirdest things, like you smell like shoes. What? Like
no, new shoes.
Therefore, I smell like shoes. I love finding, anniversary dates for things like this with, Woody's birthday, but finding the people behind them that created it and the drive and motivation. Like these military veterans, touched every space and facet of this particular character that's so iconic. It just seems exponential what veterans can do in our communities.
I think it's funny too, because if you look at the calendars, like the national calendars, every day is a day, whether it's like Sisters Day, Super Producer Day, whatever it is, there's always a day, and which means that there's a story. And not only is there a story, there's somebody that pushed to have this day memorialized in some way. So there's just an endless amount of rabbit holes that you could chase down, bugs intended, on these types of topics, and finding military tie-ins. Yeah, that's always great.
Well, I enjoyed putting this one together for you guys, so thanks for letting me share it.
Well, I am going to go from cartoons to something, way more sad. So,
Way.
Buckle up, buckos. So on February 28th, 1943, a 20-year-old draftee inducted into the U.S. Army at Fort Snelling in his hometown of St. Paul, Minnesota, said a particularly painful farewell for the very last time he addressed his mother, who was near death from cervical cancer. "Goodbye, Sparky," said his bedridden mother, Dina, who was 48. "We'll probably never see each other again."
She
died. Yeah, 48. I know. It doesn't seem young when you're little. You're like, oh my gosh. But like when you get into your 40s,
When you're in
you're
your
like,
40s,
I feel pretty good. I'm not
young.
dead yet.
Dude,
I'm not
that's
dead
like
yet.
3 years from now for me. That's sketchy.
Yeah.
That poor lady.
But she said, we'll probably never see each other again. So she died the next day while Sparky, the childhood nickname of Charles M. Schultz, was
Wow.
en route to Fort Campbell in Kentucky. The cartoonist who drew the popular Peanuts comic strip, which marked its 75th anniversary back in October, was unable to return home for her funeral. So years later, Schultz reflected on that experience as a defining moment in his life, one that enabled him to project his own fragile emotions through the downtrodden world of good old Charlie Brown, the comic strip's main character. And it would also lead to the development of one of the most beloved illustrated figures of all time. The Army taught me all I needed to know about loneliness, Schultz later recalled of the tears shed in his barracks following Dina's death. Schultz was
Which Peanut was the one with the blanket?
Linus.
Linus.
I feel like he's talking a lot of Linus right now.
I'm wondering how many of the characters represent different aspects of that grief.
Oh yeah, I guess
I mean, it's interesting though, the way that art sort of bleeds in from your life, you know, as somebody who writes and somebody who does music. I mean, there's a lot of myself in these characters, but you know, it feels very self-absorbed to write characters based off yourself. So oftentimes you start with what you know, and then you try to find someone who seems to embody that. You know,
I related to most of those characters with the exception of Peppermint Patty. She was such an evil. Ugh, she was so
I
mean.
figured that would be more exactly who you identify. I'll kick you in the taint, Joe. But Schultz was incredibly proud of his World War II service, said Michael Keane, a veteran of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars and author of Charlie Brown's Christmas Miracle. However, his mother's passing while at basic training really had an impact on him. He was horribly lonely. It's worse being lonely when you're surrounded by people. And you can't always blame the people around you, because some of us are better at masking than we think we are. Sometimes we think we're in the midst of a cry for help and nobody's answering, and you can sit on that and think, wow, nobody cares at all, when really you're 20% quieter than normal. Like, it's not something, and people are dealing with their own stuff too. So, you know, it's easy to shift that onto other people, but oftentimes I've found that when I'm at my loneliness, I've chosen that. I've been chipping away at my own foundation for long enough that I've sort of put myself in a spot where I'm not as approachable as always. I'm not saying that that's what happened with him. I'm saying really to anyone listening, a lot of times for most people, you're only as alone as you choose to be in some ways. You know, because there's peace in loneliness, and then you carry it too far. You know, just don't let it sneak up on you. So Charles Schultz, sorry, my dog was making some odd noises back there. Schultz served in the U.S. Army with the 20th Armored Division in battles across France, Belgium, and Germany. He rose to the rank of staff sergeant and became a light machine gun squad leader. According to Keane, Schultz likely suffered from undiagnosed PTSD. After the war, he was plagued by severe depression and paralyzing anxiety. His wife wanted him to get therapy, said Keane. That's a familiar story to many veterans. Schultz wouldn't do it, though. He was afraid it would affect his creativity, and he wouldn't be able to draw peanuts anymore.
That's interesting.
That is very interesting and insightful.
I would love to hear his supporting reasons why he thought therapy would impact his creativity. As somebody who is a creative, like,
I bet he felt that strong emotional connection, and like you were saying earlier, he funneled that into the characters, and he thought that he might lose that.
Interesting.
Maybe.
You know, Have you ever listened to an artist, and I won't call anyone out because I love musicians and I know that they've got their journeys, but it's sometimes as they grow out of their pain stage, they lose some of the fire that they had in some of the earlier albums. And I don't want anyone to ever go through that stuff, but I've got a dear friend of mine that went through a very, very tough divorce and some health issues and he's an artist, and I have never seen somebody grow in their art the way that he did. I think finding a way to channel that stuff the way that Schultz did is a very healthy, and I don't think that this was a lack of therapy fully. I think this was his therapy.
That makes
I mean,
sense.
I think we get a lot of peace
I'll
out of
call
what we
somebody
do.
out. You know, Justin Bieber has not put out any quality work since his separation with Selena Gomez back in the day.
Man, I am not getting involved in this because if you think that fandom is still not out there
You know
canceling
what?
people, bro,
He has not produced since marrying Haley. It's just not been there. But you know,
Oh my
I'll tell you some of the.
It's been nice knowing you, Adam. It's been real nice knowing you. We're gonna have Justin Bieber on as our third host in 2 weeks. Oh man! All right, so after World War II, Schultz pursued his dream of drawing comic strips, starting with a series of one-panel drawings called "Little Folks" for the St. Paul Pioneer Press in 1950.
I don't know why that's so funny to me.
Little Folks. He was signed by the United Feature Syndicate to do a daily 4-panel strip across the country. That's 4 times the amount of work he was doing before. I hope he got paid for that. Schultz had to make a few revisions before it could be syndicated because it was too similar to the Little Abner comic strip. So the name was changed to Peanuts. He also needed a new name for one of his characters, a dog named Sniffy, who was already taken by a pooch in another comic strip. Where's Sniffy now? In the grave, baby.
I wonder how Sniffy came about. Like, you know how a dog likes to go up and sniff butts and stuff? Was that?
Oh yeah,
I do that.
Hang on, Sniffy, Sniffy, hang on.
No, it doesn't have the same.
Yeah, that stinks. I'm so sorry. So Schultz recalled some of the last conversations with his mother, who by that time was prescribed morphine to ease her suffering. The resulting hallucinations crept into conversations with her son, and Dina spoke about getting a new dog who she planned to name Snoopy.
Oh, how beautiful.
Of course, Snoopy also has a sad story behind it. This guy, I want to hug him. So coming from a Norwegian family, the word Snoopy, S-N-U-P-I, meant affection. So Schultz knew it was the perfect name for the character in his comic strip. Snoopy made his debut in October 4th, 1950. That's debut, just in case the joke didn't carry. It's funnier now that I explained it. 2 days after Peanuts first premiered in newspapers, he grew in popularity to the point where the character soon dominated. Peanuts dominated the comic strip, as well as the network TV specials. People ran in fear. At its peak in 1975, Peanuts was read by more than 100 million people each day, and Snoopy was a huge part of that success. I think everybody our age, especially, if you think about Peanuts and really in general, the first vision that pops in my head outside of Charlie Brown is Snoopy laying on top of his doghouse. Oh, yeah. And when I think of Peanuts, for some reason, if you tell me to name a character, I would say Charlie Brown. But if you just said the word Peanuts, what would pop in my head is him and Woodstock.
Yeah, Woodstock, the bird.
Yeah, the little yellow bird.
So I saw a bird. So at its peak in 75, 100 million people, and became a symbol of hope during the Vietnam War when American troops brandished Snoopy on helmets, tanks, trucks, and other military gear. Schultz died at 87 in 2000, 2 days before his final Peanut strip ran in newspapers around the world. He would have been 103 on November 26th.
That's crazy.
So we got links for that in the show notes. It's pretty interesting.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. I got one for you, for both of you.
Okay. What you got?
A group of women legionnaires from the American Legion Pacific Palisades Post 283 in California are strengthening their bonds while taking on all 3 elements of the USA 250 Challenge. Navy veteran Michelle Heaton is coordinating the post's Women Legionnaires Committee and its activities, including a recent day that was dedicated to engaging in all 3 challenging categories. Do you remember what they are, Joe? That's right. Community service, mental wellness, and physical fitness.
You
Good
didn't
job.
give them a chance.
I think it's community service, mental wellness, and physical.
Athletics
That's
go
right.
first.
You got 3 out of 3. I knew you would. The 10 women American Legion members visited Will Rogers State Beach, playing a game with a flying disc, practicing.
Frisbee, or is they not using frisbee because that's a commercial name?
No, like maybe like the discs for like disc golf, you know?
Is that a frisbee? Right?
No, they have
Sorry,
fancy names. I don't know.
Plastic.
I've never disc golf before. Practicing meditation with a sound bowl. Way to go, ladies. And handing out water and snacks to other beach goers. Also trying to get the flying disc inside the sound bowls.
There you go.
That was a fun game that they came up with when they got bored. We decided to do the USA 250 Challenge as a group so we can incorporate some fun into the activities, as well as continue to engage with the community as a whole, she explained. We're going to bring awareness to the community that the American Legion goes out together and does things for the community. The American Legion's USA 250 Challenge, which celebrates the nation's 250th birthday, offers 3 categories for participants to pursue solo or as part of a team. Proceeds from the $30 registration fee and optional fundraising dollars go toward the Veteran and Children's Foundation, which supports disabled veterans and military families in financial distress. Post 283 member Melissa Orduna, who served in the Navy during Operation Enduring Freedom, enjoys the community service part of the challenge. Community service is important to me because it's something I've been doing for the majority of my life. It just makes me feel good, and I like to be able to give back. Orduna noted their group can inspire other women veterans to join the American Legion. The common bond that we share is our love of service, she said. We want to make a change for women leaving the service. We want to bring them on board. We want to show them that they're heard, that they're cared for, and most importantly, to build the camaraderie we have. Well, I think that's really heartwarming. And
That's great.
we need more showing up like that in the communities.
No, I want to just make note that these are women veterans, all 3, because we're overachievers. Good job.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I only said good job.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm going to do way better than you. And no, I saw a commercial about, and it was a female veteran that was talking about how welcome she felt joining the American Legion, and it was her just sharing her experience. And I thought, man, that's incredible, because the more people we bring in, the more these things that are happening that are supporting veterans, these things like the VA loans and stuff that you can get when you buy a house, all these things, people have to fight for this stuff. And when you join the American Legion, that's the kind of things that we do. That's the kind of things that we make sure, when something is happening that's going to benefit veterans or hurt veterans, we talk about it. We talk about it on here. The posts know about it. They talk about it. And our goal is to be informed voters that support, whether it's Republican or Democrat, people that take care of veterans. And so, get involved. You have a lot more power involved with the American Legion than you can imagine. And these women veterans that are joining, these are leaders. I'm seeing so many that are not joining the auxiliary, that are joining the Legion post as as veterans themselves, and are getting leadership positions and stuff. And it's the dream. This is what I want to see, is representation of our veterans of all ages and all races and all genders leading, because that's what it takes to make that's what's great about America, is that it's chaos. It's chaos with one goal, and that's what the American Legion does.
Vote for Joe Worley, ladies and gentlemen. Let's bump those numbers up. Let's bump those numbers up. Those are big numbers. Let's get those numbers up. All right. We'll have the link to the full story and video in our show notes. And alphas, get a team together in your community. Bump those numbers up and head out to legion.org/USA250 to join the challenge.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you have a nice turkey or tofurkey if you're a meat-averse.
Be
Some
careful
twins cooking for you.
Some yams, some ham.
Are you gonna watch?
I do like some good yams.
You got to watch Plane, Trains, and Automobiles.
Oh yeah, we do.
Sell some shower curtains. Pay for your expenses.
What's the book? What's the book that he's reading? John Candy and I can't remember what it is. All right, I'll figure it out. I'll tell you guys next year.
Not know the answer. All right, Alphas. Thanks for listening. Thanks for being our friends. Thanks for being here with us. Thanks for sharing space and giving us the opportunity to share stories and continue to be the voice for the American Legion. You can subscribe to our podcast, our newsletter, and send us mail and guest recommendations at legion.org/Tango Alpha Lima. Send us some Thanksgiving photos too while you're at it. What shenanigans you guys have gotten into. And happy Thanksgiving. Drive safe. Don't drink and drive. We'll see you next week.
It's called the Canadian Mounted. I'm done.